I get to introduce myself. I'm Barry Brickner. I'm the mayor of Farmington Hills. And I'd like to welcome you all to our latest community conversation organized by Farmington SAFE. With me tonight from our council, they're all standing over there. Ken Massey, who's the big kahuna with this organization. And we have Valerie Knoll and Samantha Steckloff are here. Farmington SAFE, which stands for Suicide Awareness for Everyone, is our community initiative to change the dialogue on mental health and to reduce the incidence of suicide. SAFE's efforts have been very successful and they're getting noticed nationally. SAFE has been asked to present in other communities as the best practices at the fall meeting of the National League of Cities. And I was at the National League of Cities. I can tell you a lot of people came to the SAFE, that's it right there, the SAFE booth, asking questions because they were all interested in doing something in their own communities. Tonight we welcome speaker Jordan Burnham from the Philadelphia area. Jordan has a story to share that will touch all of you and that will underscore SAFE's message, let's talk about it. Jordan is here tonight to talk about something that most people won't be courageous enough to share. You see, when he was a teen, Jordan survived a suicide attempt and recovered from depression. He lived to tell about it so that others could know that they're not alone and that hope and help are available. Jordan travels the country speaking to young people, to educators, and mental health professionals to push for open dialogue in schools and in homes about suicide risk and mental health issues, especially with teens. Jordan, we thank you for your important mission, and we thank you for being here with us tonight to share your story. As I said, he came all the way from Philadelphia to get away from all the snow to come here to sunny Detroit. And we can laugh at him because we usually get the snow and they don't, so yes. I would also like to thank the Farmington SAFE team for facilitating Jordan's appearance here tonight and for the important work they're doing in our community. Thanks also go out to the Graham E. Smith Memorial Fund for financial support, and that makes tonight's event and other events in the community possible. To show a movie, right? And a video. I'm getting off stage.
Basically to make sure that you know where we are, what we do, who we are, and how we can help you. It's just like the counseling center.
I've been told that to get to heaven you have to go through hell. Some of the worst moments in your life will in turn make some of the best moments in your life.
Please welcome Jordan Burnham.
I am 21 years old.
All right, University of Miami, hello. Guys, I can't tell you, I'm so excited to be here.
I also tried to take my own life.
So it's my job to go around the country to speak to kids in middle schools, high schools, colleges on my story. So growing up, I had my mom and dad who both worked in school districts and my sister who's 5 years older than me. Now going through elementary school and into middle school, I actually was able to gain friends that I could trust and I felt comfortable in the environment that I was now in. I fit in and it felt like I was in one big family.
I went to high school at Upper Marion High School in King of Prussia, and I started my high school career in 2004. My dad being an athletic director, I got exposed to so many sports, and baseball was just something that struck me.
Go JB, go JB. My son's high school experience had to be utopia. He had girlfriends, he was playing sports, he was doing well with it, getting most valuable player awards.
He was really good, actually, at a lot of sports, so not just one. I mean, he was great with basketball, with baseball, golf. He's really good at golf.
The pressures on high school athletes is enormous in a lot of ways. I didn't want him to feel that play sports because I'm in sports.
I felt as though when it came to playing past high school, I put a lot of pressure on myself to try and make it out of high school. Especially being an African American, and a lot of times the only African American either on the baseball team or on the golf team, I felt like I always had to be the best at my sport. Because I put these unattainable goals up so high, and when I didn't reach them, I would just beat myself up over and over again.
Going into 9th grade, I was voted class president, which is something I should have been proud of, should have been happy about, but at the same time, I was going to that school with fake smiles, with fake laughs, with a mask on my face. 9th grade was also the first time I started to see my grades slip, and I couldn't figure out why.
It's really hard at that point in high school to try to work, you know, with your son or daughter at that age. He was more irritable. The driving test, of course, that situation really brought it out fully.
10th grade comes around, and I was going to take my driver's test. I get there, do the blinkers, get to the stop sign, stop, go to parallel park, hit the curb 5 times and fail.
I snapped. I bottled up all of these emotions that I had before this, and I snapped at the driver instructor and at my dad.
Screams, yells, curses at me. I'm like, excuse me? Never had that kind of confrontational situation with him or even seen him that angry.
I had thoughts of, yes, maybe I should just take my car over a cliff, or maybe I should just try and take my own life because there's no point in being here anymore. I was diagnosed with depression when I was in 10th grade.
1 out of 5 kids before they turn 18 will experience an episode of depression. And one thing that we have seen pretty consistently is that there's a decreased serotonin levels within the brains of people who are depressed. And that basically impairs their ability to function.
It was like all of a sudden, you know, you had the answer to why he was sleeping so much and, you know, why he was having trouble focusing.
I thought it was like a cold. The more you take the medicine, the more you rest and get something to drink, some orange juice, you're going to get better.
One of the biggest symptoms that I know personally I saw in myself was the loss of interest in things that usually make yourself really happy. When I would go golfing and I wasn't happy about it, that's when I knew there was something really wrong. But you just don't want to talk about it.
In the beginning of my senior year, I was nominated to play for the individual playoffs in golf, which should have been exciting to me, but it's still just numb to me.
It seemed like he was going to be our star player that year as his senior year, and expected him to be the person that would probably be making it to our suburban tournament.
So I remember my dad picking me up after I play this great round, after I'm so excited, and he looks tired. And I asked him what was wrong, and he says nothing. I'm just tired. And I just remember my mom sitting on the couch looking like she's about to cry. That's when my dad walked in with a duffel bag full of alcohol.
When he dropped that bag, my heart dropped with it. Because here I am, their son, the person that should be making them the happiest, the proudest, and all I do is disappoint them.
Jordan, is this yours?
It's mine.
And he's just very upset and going, I'm just no good. I'm just no good, you know, I'm not a good son.
After that, I walked into my bedroom. I locked the door like I usually did when I was upset or mad at myself or my parents and didn't want to talk to anyone. But this time, I barricaded my door with my chair.
And I started banging on his door, calling him and saying, Jordan, come on, you know, I'm depressed about this too. And I was trying to talk to him, and he just say, I know he said no, Mom.
And that's the last memory I have. I don't remember falling. I don't remember the way that I hit the ground. But I can just remember my body just stopping.
What I saw was indescribable. To see him laying there, half unconscious, he's not gonna make it.
When I hit the ground, I was going approximately 50 miles per hour. It's just over 90 feet. Broke my fibula, my tibia. I shattered my femur, broke my pelvis. I broke my left wrist. I broke my jaw in 4 different places. I was in a coma for 5 days.
I just knew he was still breathing with the machine, so that's what you held on to every day, that we still had him.
I'm laying in this hospital, I have a trach in my throat. I'm down to 90 pounds. No one wants to tell me what happened.
About 2 weeks go by and my sister's visiting. To this day, my sister and I remain best friends, so I knew if there was one person that was gonna tell me what happened, it would be my sister.
Saw each other and said hi and whatnot. He said, he mouthed to me because he couldn't speak. He mouthed, what happened?
And she said, you went out your window.
And then he looked at me and asked, did someone push me?
Who pushed me?
I looked at him and said, you know, you were by yourself.
Suicide attempt. How did I survive a 9-story fall?
All I could think to say was God.
There were so many things with his body that needed to heal, and little by little, he just kept setting goals for himself.
I was in a hospital for 5 months and they were there every single day.
I remember the first time he had a walker, and they said, just go 10 feet. And the next thing I know, he's going out the door. And I'm like, Jordan, how'd you do that? And he would just look at me and smile.
I'm here because there's a reason for me to be here. I think that I'm part of a movement that's bigger than me, and that's sharing your story to make sure that other people know that they're not alone.
April 2nd, 2004, and my daughter Laura called up screaming on the phone, and she said, I just found Jim and he's dead in the garage. And then she was screaming, and then a police officer picked up, and I'm saying, like, you know, I just remember saying, are you sure? Are you sure this can't be happening? And I said, sir, I'm sorry, you know, he's gone.
I just couldn't believe it, unexpectedly. And then, I guess guilt that we didn't see it, and then we didn't have a chance to even tell him that he loved him and he shouldn't have died by himself. That was the worst part. He was such a such a good kid. He should not have died by himself. That's all that I think about now, is that, you know, I failed him and I failed to see the pain he was in.
He was good looking, star athlete, could talk to anybody. And that's why when he died, it was a shock to all of us, because everybody looked up to him. And maybe that was part of the issue, is that he couldn't live up to his own expectations of what he expected from himself.
I think if he knew that he needed to see somebody, I think he would have told us, but I don't know that he understood on his own.
We don't look at suicide as an act of choice. We don't believe somebody chose to be mentally ill. And in over 92% of cases where somebody has died by suicide, we do see that there was a mental illness present, which was either undiagnosed or untreated.
When we were wheeling his casket out of the church, I was feeling pretty crappy. And something snapped in my head and said, I have to do something. And I remember turning around to the crowd, a couple hundred people, and said, you know, we're going to start a foundation in Jim's name and figure out how to make this better.
I met the Ganleys doing a documentary with them. I remember seeing it in their face and just the way that they talked to me, that maybe if Jimmy would have heard a speaker like me or just heard my story, maybe it would have stopped him from going through with the suicide attempt. Maybe it would have stopped him from getting to that place. And I just became such a fan of their mission to try and help, but not only help, but educate other young adults and parents on this topic and on these issues. I believe so strongly in that goal.
Jordan's a sensitive young man. He wants to make a difference. You look at Jimmy and you look at Jordan, And you would think they would be the least likely to be suffering from depression.
Jordan realizes what he has. He has a second chance. God put him here for a reason to work on depression and making it not stigmatized.
Now, leading up to graduation, my dad and I discussed what my goal was. That was to be able to walk at graduation. I'll never forget wheeling up, and I put the brakes on the wheelchair. I get up, and my dad left the walker right there that I was gonna walk with. The only thing I see is my dad. I know in his heart that this is the proudest moment he's ever had of his son. He should be dead. And I go back down the stairs, and almost metaphorically, I can't even get to the last step without my dad being there.
He's coming down the steps, he looks at me. There's a great look. He says, Dad, thanks for being here for me, and Dad, I love you.
And he hugged me back and he said, you know, I love you too. And I think in a lot of ways that was almost him saying, I'll never let you fall again.
Depression shows no bias. It can affect absolutely anyone. They can be the star athlete, they can be popular, they can appear to have it all, but it's more about what's going on the inside. And Jordan wore that mask.
When I was laying in the hospital bed, what I was hoping is that it would make it okay and even cool for young adults to talk about whatever they're going through and feel confident in doing so. Thank you, University of Miami. You guys have been so great. I really appreciate it today.
When I got home out of the hospital, the mantle that you see behind me, that's what I saw. I saw my accomplishments that my dad put there to remind me, we're proud of you no matter what. Look at what you have done with your life before this and what you're going to do after this.
Good evening. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Luke Good, and I am a member of SAFE and a current sophomore at University of Detroit Mercy. I want to begin by thanking all of you for making the time to come to this important community event. I want to begin by saying that a lot has changed for me over the last couple of years. I am now a member of SAFE, and as we heard Mayor Brickner say earlier, SAFE is a suicide prevention task force whose aim is to spur a conversation in the community. We recognize that mental illness and suicide are issues in our community, and we work to destigmatize these issues in order to make conversation more comfortable as well as more accessible. Some people may ask why I joined SAFE. I joined SAFE because I lost one of my best friends this summer to suicide. I saw the impact that it had not only on her friends and family, but on the community as a whole. I also witnessed the effect it had on her personally. She went untreated for depression because she was scared of what would happen if she let people know. She was scared that if she went to a psychologist or if she told anybody she was depressed, that she would lose her friends. One of the reasons I joined SAFE was to make people realize that this is not true. I wanted people to feel more comfortable sharing their feelings, their thoughts, and their stories so that we can avoid something like this. I wanted people to realize that there's nothing shameful about being depressed or having any sort of mental illness. What a lot of people don't realize about me or don't know about me is that I am a suicide attempt survivor myself. Even my closest friends back in high school, this would surprise them as well. This would surprise them because of the ways I walked around the halls in high school. I was funny, I was laughing myself, and I was always making others laugh as well. And this would come as a surprise to them because I never shared my story with anybody. And I did this for two reasons. One, I didn't want to disappoint anybody. I didn't want people to think, wow, this kid, he was funny, laughing, and now he's depressed. I didn't want to let anybody down in that way. And the other thing was I didn't want to lose my friends. I didn't know that if I came out and said, hey, I have these issues, I'm depressed, I didn't know if my friends would leave me. And looking back in hindsight, I now see that both of these things are simply not true. We live in a very welcoming community where you can feel free and safe to seek out the many resources that we have available for people suffering with mental illness. Another thing I wanted to accomplish in SAFE, and I hope that this event helps accomplish as well, is helping people realize that you're not alone in your struggle. Whatever you're struggling with, it could be mental illness or any other type of hardship, there are people here that love and care about you that you can seek help from. One of the biggest things that helped me on my road to recovery from depression is realizing that depression does not define who you are. I am not depression. I am Luke Good. I am a SAFE member, a sophomore at University of Detroit Mercy, a son, a brother, and no matter what happens, those will always be true. No matter how much I suffer, those things will always be true. And Jordan's a prime example of this as well. He was able to overcome his depression and both his physical and mental injuries that you saw in the film in order to travel the country and create a destigmatized attitude around depression. Jordan has been speaking for 7 years now. In 2010, he was chosen as Best of Philly for his work in mental health awareness and his public speaking. He has been featured in Sports Illustrated, People Magazine, USA Today. He's also appeared on Dr. Phil, The Ricky Lake Show, The Early Show, CNN, Good Morning America, and as you saw, ESPN E60, which was nominated for an Emmy and won 2 gold medals at the New York Festival. It is with great pleasure that I introduce to you Mr. Jordan Burnham.
All right, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. It's so great to be here. However, I did put 2 of the most important women in my life, I accidentally put our relationship in jeopardy. My girlfriend is from Cleveland, and she's an Ohio State fan. So I told her where I was coming, and she asked me, oh, are they Michigan State fans and Michigan fans? I said, yeah, most of them are. She said, all right, well, call me when you're done with your trip. So there's that. And then my sister went to Penn State. So she's a little upset with me, but I'm so glad to be here. First, I want to thank Jim Edson for watching that piece and then being able to bring me here today and allowing me to share my story and speak to all of you tonight. And I thank all of you for being here. In our society, in our daily lives, we all have the same kind of cycle that we go through. We wake up in the morning, alarm clock go off, we go to work, we go to school, we do everything that we have to do in the weekdays, and then it all comes back around the next day. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it's the same thing in this cycle of our everyday life. But tonight we stop. Tonight we stop that cycle and we step back. And we take a moment to think about mental health. We take a moment to focus on mental health. And that's so important. I think it's so great to see everyone here tonight obviously making the impact and really destigmatizing mental health and what comes along with it. Now, whenever I speak on mental health issues and mental health disorders. And those are things that have affected me since I was a kid all the way up until now. It's an ongoing battle. That's a difficult thing. Whenever I talk to people and I tell my story, people say, so what's it like now that you beat depression? So I didn't. I won't. I don't beat depression. I cope with it in the best way possible. When I wake up in the morning, I know there's a chance that I might not feel motivated to get up out of the bed and start my day, but I have to cope with it in the best way possible. And especially this time of the year, when I get to go around and travel and share my story, I take care of my mental health because I know that's what's important, and it allows me to do the things that I love, like being up here right now. Now you got to see my story, and I guess you know my entire life story, so I don't have to talk anymore because I'm good. But you know, when I see that piece, it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes by Jimmy Valvano, who is probably most famous for the Jimmy V Foundation, the speech he gave in 1993, "Never Give Up," And then 10 years before that, 1983, when him, NC State, they made it all the way to the Final Four, and they were upset the other team, and they won the national championship. And he's a great public speaker. He's terrific. And I'll never forget, he said one thing that I always loved. He said, God must love ordinary people, because ordinary people do extraordinary things every single day. And I always just love that statement that he made. And that's what I think of when I look at that video. Because when I was a young adult, when I was a kid, I knew that there was something different with me. I knew that I wasn't like anyone else because I was emotional. I would cry. I remember in 3rd grade, my teacher, Mr. Hoover, called me a crybaby all the time. He said I was too emotional, that I'm a boy, suck it up, get over it. And I knew there was something wrong with me. I wasn't like anyone else. I was always emotional. But my sister was there, and like I said in the piece, she's to this day one of my best friends, someone I talk to about everything. And that's who I would go and talk to. When I was going through difficult days, when kids would pick on me, when I felt like I didn't fit in, I would go to my sister and I would vent. And she would just listen. She didn't always have to give advice. She was just there to listen. And that's how we became really so close. And going through elementary school, middle school, my dad was the athletic director, so I got exposed to many sports. I got to play basketball, I played baseball, but to this day, golf is absolutely my favorite sport. And I remember growing up, I wanted to be just like Tiger Woods on the course. It's all right, some of you just got that, it's all right though. And so sports became something that I really relied on, that I felt like I was good at. It was an escape for whenever I felt depressed or whenever I felt sad. And it was so great to have sports as coping mechanisms. It was so great to be able to make people laugh, is one thing that I also love to do. And I also am always going to be a people person. So I love meeting new people. That got me through a lot of difficult days. My sister was always there until 7th grade. 7th grade, she goes off to Penn State University. She gets an academic scholarship to go there. That was difficult for me because that's my best friend. I didn't know which way to go now whenever I needed to vent. Whenever I needed to talk to someone, I don't have my sister there. What am I supposed to do? And then my dad gets a new job, and he goes to a high school right outside of Philadelphia. And I remember I asked him, Dad, what job are you going to interview for? And he said Upper Marion. I got so excited. I said, Dad, give me a hug. Kobe Bryant went there. We made it. He said, no, Jordan, Kobe went to Lower Marion, but are you still proud of me? I was like, Dad, no. But still supported him. And he takes this job. And that means now I move to this new area, try and get adjusted to this new school. And it was difficult. And there were times where I felt depressed, I felt sad, but I didn't really know the word for that. And there was a therapist at the school. But the kids that were going to see her, they really had serious problems going on. Their parents were getting a divorce, or someone close to them passed away. I didn't know I could walk up to a counselor or a therapist and say, I'm just having a bad day. Can we please talk? And so I shied away, and I kept all of these negative emotions and feelings on the inside. And then I go into high school. And high school was extremely, extremely difficult transition for me. When I get to 9th grade, the culture of our high school was drinking, partying and drinking. First time I ever went to a party in 9th grade, that's what everyone was doing, was drinking. And it never occurred to me that during those times, when I would go to these places and there was drinking going on, and I felt depressed, I'm using a depressant to get over feeling depressed. It sounds really stupid now. But I remember thinking to myself, there has to be a better way to cope with what I'm going through. There has to be something different. This is an escape, but it's not the answer. I need a solution. In 10th grade, I started to find that solution when I went to go see a therapist. Now, I wasn't 100% okay with going to see a therapist. My mom was the one who talked me into going, meaning I was forced to go. And I get into this therapist's office, and I'm very judgmental. I'm scared because I'm not sure what to do. I don't know if I'm supposed to be honest. Is she going to tell my parents everything? I have no idea how to go about this. And then I enter my first therapy session, and I realize this is the one person I can talk to who's not going to judge me. This is the one person I can talk to about things, and they're not going to go and tell other friends. They're not going to go ahead and tell my parents. She's not going to tell everyone my secrets and what I'm going through. I said, all right, well, this works for me. But then I was diagnosed with depression. That's when things went downhill, because now I had a title next to my name, depression. And I didn't want to deal with that. I didn't want to accept that, because I was Jordan, the one who was always running around the halls and making people laugh and telling jokes, always had a smile. Now I have depression. And I didn't really know how to go about that. So I lied to my friends. Whenever I was going to see my therapist, I would say I'm going to see my doctor. I didn't tell anyone that I had depression. I was prescribed antidepressants, but I wouldn't take them because I didn't know they could truly help me. I really didn't. I never heard a message, I never heard an assembly that said, if you believe in the system and you take therapy seriously, medication seriously, this is something that can truly benefit your life. I wish I knew that back then, but I never got that message. And unfortunately, that took away some really great years that I could have had in high school. And my junior year was by far the worst year that I've had in my life. My junior year, I was struggling academically. I felt a lot of pressure of junior year, which we were told is the most important year when it comes to grades, when it comes to sports. It's the hardest year. And I hated that pressure because Tara, my sister, was a valedictorian in high school, straight A's, perfect student, scholarship to Penn State, kind of a show-off. But I thought I had to live up to everything that she did. And I put this pressure on myself, and so now I'm struggling academically, I'm depressed, I'm sad, and I have anxiety about everything. And to this point, I'm thinking, is therapy really the answer? Is taking antidepressants really the answer? And so all of a sudden now, I'm not taking my medicine on a consistent basis. I'm doing literally everything possible that's wrong going about my depression and my mental health disorder. Again, because I just don't want that title next to me. Junior year, also went to a mental hospital. And that was one thing that I never thought I would have to do, is go to a mental hospital. And I remember sitting there, and I'm looking around at the other guys around me, and they look like me, they dress like me. And I'm thinking to myself, here I am, Jordan, the junior at Upper Marion High School, and I'm in a mental hospital. But I realized that as we go through life, as we go through struggles, and we find ourselves in places that we didn't think we would be, we need to take away that title and just say, I'm Jordan, I'm struggling, that's why I'm here. And I had to learn that while I was in there. I had to learn how to cope with what I was going through in life, and that took a while. I remember my first therapy session. We all got around in a circle, we said why we were there, and everyone else has these sad, traumatic stories. I'm embarrassed to even stand up and say why I'm there. I felt privileged, so I felt like I couldn't complain about why I was there. And the therapist there, whenever we were done talking, he would say to me, you have to stop comparing circumstance to circumstance. You have to stop comparing event to event, because it doesn't matter the event, big or small, it's how you perceive it and it's how you cope with it. And if you cope with it in a negative way, that's why all of you are here right now, because you're going through issues, you're going through problems, and you have to find a better way to cope with it. And I'll never forget that week of being in there. It was incredible to meet the patients, their names and their stories, the therapists I got to talk to. I felt mentally stronger, emotionally stronger. But when I got back to my junior year, I get back to the real world, and it's a horrible transition. Because in the mental hospital, you're safeguarded from anything that could harm you emotionally. There's no cell phone, so there's no texting or calling from anyone. There's only PG movies. And I've never seen Lion King that many times in 1 week. But what's funny is it's all younger guys trying to act tough, but yet we still land on Lion King every time. But it's a great movie. And so being in this mental hospital, I'm able to escape from the pressures of school. I'm able to escape from the stressors that I had that were going on. I get back to my junior year. I feel like I don't have an outlet to talk about these things. Because in the mental hospital, it was understood we all had problems, we all had issues. We sat down in a circle and we talked about them. We didn't need alcohol to do that. We just sat down and we were honest about what we were going through. And there were things I told complete strangers in the mental hospital that I just met that I couldn't even tell some of my best friends that I had known for years. And I fell right back into this mist of depression saying, why talk about how I feel? No one cares. No one really understands. Junior year was also the first 2 times that I got caught drinking by my parents. That was one of the worst feelings in the world. I love my mom. I love my dad so much that I always felt like such a disappointment when I got in trouble. My sister was the angel. She was the saint. She never got in trouble. She was the perfect student, perfect person. And then there's me, and I was struggling academically. I'm getting in trouble with drinking, and I felt like such a disappointment to my parents. And that was a constant theme that would happen throughout that year going into my senior year. And right before my senior year started, my parents went off on a trip. I throw a party for me and my friends. We're drinking, and the party gets busted by the police. I know I have to call my dad to tell him what happened, and I'm crying. I'm not crying because I know I'm in trouble. I'm not crying because I feel bad. I'm crying because of how guilty I feel. And I'm telling him, Dad, I'm so sorry for letting you down yet again as your son. I'm just so sorry. But this time, it was 10 times worse. My dad's the athletic director at my high school. I put his job in jeopardy. There were people on the board at the high school that wanted him to lose his job because of my mistake. My friends, the athletes at that party, got suspended for half of our seasons going into our senior year. And I took that weight and put it on my shoulders, carrying around all of this pressure. I was constantly having suicidal thoughts at the beginning of my senior year. Not questioning whether I would do it or not, but going through a checklist of, well, if I did, how would I do it? And I would walk around and I would play music that was depressing, music that talked about suicide. And I'd play it at the loudest volume because I just wanted to escape from life and what was going on. Now that night that my dad confronted me about the alcohol that he found in my car, that night I remember looking at my parents and saying, I feel so bad for them. I'm their son. I feel so bad for them that they have to put up with me. They have to deal with me. And all I do is disappoint them. It wasn't even about feeling guilty at that point. I just felt like I was worthless. I said, what's the point? Because my parents deserve to have a better son, daughter. I'm just a disappointment. Why be here? That night when I went out my window and I break my fibula, my tibia, I shattered my left femur, broke my pelvis, my jaw, 4 different places, my left wrist, had fractures to my skull, and was bleeding internally from my brain and my organs. When my dad went to walk to get my car from school, it's about a 5-minute walk. My dad went to go get my car. He drives back. All of a sudden, he hears EMTs. He hears sirens, police cars, and he sees police caution tape, and it's right directly under my window. And he runs over, and he runs through the caution tape, and he sees me. My leg wrapped around my right leg, my left leg just completely busted. He saw so much blood coming from my head, he knew I just wasn't gonna make it. And as the EMTs are getting ready to put me in the ambulance, he said, wait, please, can I get my wife so she can see him just somewhat alive one more time? I said, no, we have to get him into the ambulance, we have to get him into a helicopter. And he told me that that was the first moment in his life that as a dad, he felt he had no control over helping his son, and how terrible of a feeling that was for him. And as the police left, they said, they're gonna take your son to a hospital down in Philadelphia, which we live 30 minutes outside of. He said, just go there, we'll give you a call and let you know what hospital he's in. So my mom and my dad get in the car, and it's rush hour. And my dad's cell phone is dying, and at any moment, that phone can ring. And it's one or two things that you could hear. You could either hear that I'm at a hospital, or you can be told that I passed away, that I'm no longer here. But they drove to Philadelphia, and they told my parents I was going to the University of Pennsylvania Hospital. And they get there, and I was under John Doe. And they were told that I had less than 24 hours to live. They couldn't stop the internal bleeding, they just couldn't. After that, I was still given 24 hours to live, but they still couldn't stop the internal bleeding. After that, my kidneys failed. And they gave me a 40% chance to live. I was induced into that coma for 5 days, in the ICU for 2 weeks. And I remember hearing voices, my friends, my family come to visit. I remember hearing the voices, but I didn't know we were at a hospital. And I'll never forget the feeling of just knowing where I am, but just having no idea why I'm there. It was just so strange to me. The doctors, the nurses knew my name, but I had no idea why I was there. And as I'm laying in this hospital bed in this feeding tube, and I have the trach in my throat, and I can't talk and I can't move, I just didn't know what to do. And when my sister told me that I went out of my 9-story bedroom window, I remember that morning, ironically, my physics class was on heights. And our teacher was a former firefighter. And we learned that day that the cutoff point for life and death, it's a golden rule, is 5 stories. So when my sister told me that I went out of my 9-story bedroom window, I said, well, I guess Mr. Freeland owes me some extra credit. And I'm laying here and I'm thinking, I'm never gonna get my life back physically. There's just absolutely no way. I have no idea what to do. But when a reporter from the Philadelphia Inquirer contacted my dad, asked if I would do this story, if I would do this interview, my mom wanted no part of this. She said no, it was a terrible idea, it was too soon, it's something I might regret later down the line in life. But I said yes, because I didn't have a high school degree at this point. I didn't have a job, I didn't have a career yet. I really don't have anything laying in this hospital bed, but I got a story. I don't know what that story's gonna do. I don't know if it's gonna help people, I don't know if it's gonna motivate people, but I wanna give that story away. Because if it does help someone, even if it's just one person, stopping them so that they're not in my place right now, laying in a hospital bed, that's what I wanna do. And that story came out in January of 2008, and had no idea it would be the front page of the Philadelphia Inquirer, and that would run across the country. And it was amazing to hear feedback from people thanking me for not only telling this story, but the one thing I heard over and over again was thank you for making me feel like I'm not alone with how I struggle with my mental health. I'm glad that I can make a difference. And while I'm in physical rehab hospital, I'm able to get homeschooled at the same time. And now I start outpatient. And as you saw before our graduation, I remember the first day of outpatient physical therapy. And Ted, my physical therapist, he asked, what's your goal? I said, I'm walking at graduation. At this point, I could barely stand on my left leg. I couldn't get out of a wheelchair. I had to be assisted out of my wheelchair. And I just started using a walker. I said, I'm walking at graduation. My dad and I were the only ones who knew it was gonna happen. I wanted to keep it a secret from my mom, my family that came in from Pittsburgh. No one knew what was gonna happen. And as I start walking towards my dad with that walker, I had never walked that fast. I had never walked that far. I remember when I was using a walker, I could go from here to the end of the room, and I would have to sit down because I was too tired. I'll never forget that day. And that's again when that statement just comes in that ordinary people can do extraordinary things every single day. And to this day, as I watch that video, I have no idea where that strength came from, where that speed came from. But I know at the end of the day, my dad was there, and that's all I needed. That's the only strength, that's the only courage I needed, was my dad. And I was so blessed to be able to graduate on time with the rest of my class. I started speaking at the age of 19, and I started speaking because I knew that as a young adult, I needed to share this message. I needed to share my story, because I didn't want other people to feel like they were alone. I wanted to really make a difference. I really wanted to help people. I wanted to just go out, tell my story in hopes that it motivates people. But I was scared. I was still nervous of how people would judge me. My first public speaking engagement was actually in May of 2008, when I got to speak to Congress. I speak to Congress, I give a speech, and I thanked my parents for being there. And I remember sitting in the Capitol, and I'm looking at my dad. My dad's looking back at me, and I just, in my mind, immediately think of, you saw me on the ground dying, and here you are every step of the way supporting me with everything that I do. To this day, I can't thank him enough for it, but I thank him every day. Every time I call them, after a speaking engagement, after a day, I just tell them thank you so much, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you two. That's my backbone, that's all I need for my strength. That's all I need is my parents, my sister, my family. That's my support system. That's what I need. With having a mental health disorder, that's what I need. And even though I love my job, I'm so happy to be here. I'm so grateful to be alive, to be able to get around physically and to be able to share this story. Even though I have all of that, at the end of the day, I still go to sleep. I have depression. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder 2 years ago. I have to still cope with those things, but I cope with it in the best way possible. And I know each day might be a struggle, but I accept that. And that's something that it took me a while to do. And it's unfortunate that maybe the suicide attempt is something that turned me around as far as putting my faith in therapy and my mental health and getting better. But I knew it's something I had to do to stay alive and to be here today. I was recently asked to give a title to my presentation, and I really struggled with it. I couldn't think of a title for my presentation. But I finally came up, after thinking about it for hours, I finally came up with it. I said, a story of survival, of surviving this suicide attempt, this 9-story fall, being able to survive, it's amazing. A journey of recovery. I will never be recovered. I'll always be in recovery, both mentally and physically, for the rest of my life. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with still being in recovery. And the last thing I could think of was a message of acceptance. And to me, that's the most meaningful one. Because I accept the fact that I have a mental health disorder. I accept the fact that my suicide attempt happened. And I accept the fact that there are people just like me who struggle, that may suffer, that need to hear this message. And I accept the challenge to be able to speak up and share my voice so that others know that they're not alone. And I accept the movement of mental health and being a part of that, and the mental health awareness, suicide prevention, I accept being a part of that. I want to close with a story of something that happened 2 years ago. I was traveling on the day of the Super Bowl, and I had a layover that was about 2 hours, and I stopped at a little bar in the airport, and I sit next to this older gentleman, studious-looking guy, has his glasses on, he's writing something down, and I sit next to him, and he takes off his glasses, and we start talking about football. And he asked me who I wanted to win, who did I think was going to win, and we ended up having a great conversation. And so as he gets up, he puts his glasses on, he puts on his coat, and he said to the bartender, his meal and drink is on me. I said, thank you, sir, I appreciate that. He said, of course. And then he said, I forgot to ask you, what do you do for a living? And so I speak on mental health and suicide prevention. He takes off his coat, takes off his glasses. He sits back down. For 10 minutes, he talked to me about what it was like for him and his sister to see their grandfather take his own life right in front of them. What it was like for him coping with 2 sisters who were in and out of a rehab for alcoholism and addiction. And for 10 minutes, he just told me his story. I just sat back and I listened. And after that 10 minutes, he gets up, he says, I have to go catch my flight, but let's exchange business cards. You never know when our paths will cross. And I look at his card, and he ends up being the president and CEO of this very successful, lucrative business. The first thought in my mind was, he could have bought me more than that. I should get lobster and scotch. Should I get a steak, man? But I looked at the bigger picture. I said, here I am, 23, and going around speaking at schools, hoping to make a difference. Here he is, the CEO, very successful, president of this business. But for just 10 minutes, we were just 2 human beings talking about mental health. And that's what this movement is. It doesn't matter your gender, it doesn't matter your age, it doesn't matter your skin color, it doesn't matter where you're at in life. We all have mental health, and we all have to cope with it in some way. And whether it affects us or someone we know, we can always take the first step in raising awareness and sticking up to this and erasing the stigma that comes along with mental health, and say, I'll be a face for mental health. I'll be a face for suicide prevention. I will stand up here on a platform and say, I won't stop telling my story because I know it makes a difference. Thank you so much for letting me share my story. I appreciate it.
Earlier you said that you think the best way to address it or such at high schools would be to just give stories. At our school, every year we do a communication camp, and while there, we found out that depression and thoughts of suicide is a very common thing within the student body. Now, when we talked about having speakers come to our school and like give their stories, the fear for that is that that will open up things within the students that they aren't ready to deal with yet. And then it will also make it scary for the parents and such. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what do you think we could do then? Like, how would you address that?
Yeah. Honestly, in my experience, really, I'm the middleman. I have the students, I have the message, but then there's the post. After I leave, there has to be counseling, there has to be, and that's the tricky thing. If teachers don't come to the assembly, if there's not a counselor or not enough counselors for those students, that's when it becomes a problem, absolutely, and you're correct in that. And I've seen it, I've gone to schools where, and obviously this is a very deep topic and subject, and I'm so glad that people, young adults, want to seek help after hearing this message. But if you only have one counselor and they're not ready to take on, I've seen like 10, 12 kids all at once, that's where it becomes an issue, that's where it becomes a problem. So I think that's where we have to step in and have other adults maybe come into the school, maybe social workers, counselors, whoever it may be. But then there's also good peer-to-peer groups that I've noticed and I've seen around schools, because I think it is special. I think it is great when peers can help other peers, but then also know the adult to go to when it gets to an extreme situation, especially going towards suicide. But you bring up a great point, you really do, is there's the students, there's the message, but then there's the post, the after effect of that. And we have to make sure for the students who want to get better and want to seek help that they have the availability to do so. So you bring up a great point, thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Before your suicide attempt, what could somebody have said to you that might have made a real difference? I'm sure you got a lot of advice. I'm sure a lot of people, told you what they thought would be helpful. But what do you think would have been helpful communication to you at that time that might have turned things around for you?
What could have someone have said to me to maybe stop me from thinking about suicide or going through with the suicide attempt? It's not necessarily advice. I wish someone would have just shared the struggles that they go through, because so many times in school we brag, especially in high school. We used to have these debates on who slept the least, like we're going to win the prize at the end. Like we would really debate and brag about who slept the least and who did the most work, and no one ever talked about how they struggled, how they were really anxious, how they were really stressed out. And I wish someone was just honest about it. And I wish I could have been, have the courage to have been honest about it back in high school. But besides that, I needed a presentation like this. And I'm not talking about me speaking, because that's very conceited to say, but I just needed someone, a young adult, to get on a stage in front of my school and share their story and say that it's okay if you struggle, it's okay to seek help, it's okay to seek treatment. This is what it was like for me. I still struggle to this day, but this is me telling my story. And that's what I needed. I just needed a story to hold on to give me hope, saying that I can get better. And back then I felt like I needed permission to get better. And, unfortunately, I didn't hear a presentation like this. And unfortunately, not all of our friends were honest about what they were struggling with. But I really just wish I heard a story like this or knew someone that was struggling. So again, I just felt like I wasn't alone. Yeah.
What do you say to someone who, after a failed attempt, continues to not seek help or not want to get better, and he's mad that it didn't work out?
Yes. What can I say to someone or help someone who attempts suicide and survives, but then still doesn't want to seek help? The best thing that you can do is reassure them that you're there, that you will, and this is something I always thought was really interesting. Whenever I went to the doctor, whenever my mom or dad went to the doctor, a lot of times someone would go with them, just because it's good to have an extra set of ears to listen to the information that you're getting. And I always say it's great to say, hey, maybe you should seek help, but also saying, you should seek help and I'll go with you. And I won't go in the therapy session with you if you don't want me to, but I'm there to support you no matter what. And that person might not hear it the first time. They might not hear it the second or third time, but there's going to be a point in someone's life where it can turn around for them. And you saying and reassuring to them, I'm here for you when you want to seek help, when you're ready to seek help, is going to be in the back of their mind. And that's the best thing that you can do. And unfortunately, we all want to be Superman, and we all want to be able to help everyone, but unfortunately, that's the most that you can do. And hope, at least soon enough, they hear that message and get that message in their head to seek treatment.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. Something I've wondered about as a mom of a new college student is, like, how did your parents stay in touch with you? Like, what did your day look like once you were kind of a little bit more in equilibrium? And, like, what would you recommend to, because a lot of times this onset of depression or anxiety really comes at that transition when you're away from traditional support systems and resources.
Absolutely.
So I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, in terms of like what you'd tell students and also what you'd tell families. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. For me, I decided I wanted to go to community college because I got homeschooled for my senior year. So I said, let me just get used to being in a classroom again before I transfer over to a university or college. And then my second year is when all of this just completely took off, and I knew this was something I really wanted to take advantage of. But when it comes to college students, the biggest fear of a lot of college students is taking time off from school. Because a lot of college students want to graduate in 4 years or graduate early. And I tell people all the time that there is no exact blueprint to college. There really isn't. And I know a lot of people want to speed through and they want to graduate early or graduate in 4 years. And I remember talking to one young lady who was just distraught that she was going to have to take a semester off and go home and take care of her mental health. And I mean, it's corny, but I related it to a GPS. I mean, just because you get recalculated on a GPS doesn't mean you didn't get to where you wanted to be. You might be a little angry at the GPS, but sometimes we just get rerouted to where we need to be, and that's how it can be in college. College is extremely difficult. It's a major transition, and you're not exactly sure who to turn to because you're not sure who are real friends, who are who are the people you hang out with, where are the resources to seek help, to seek treatment. That's where I think the relationship between parents and son or daughter being at college is vital, and just keeping in communication and checking on them and just asking how are you feeling, how are things going.
You said there are still days where you find it tough to get up in the morning and that you cope with it. Just what are some of the mechanisms used to cope with it and to help yourself get up and to tell yourself that it's going to be okay?
Yeah, some days are hard. Some days are extremely difficult. This past Saturday, I was packing to come here, and obviously I was very excited, but I was packing to come here, and I went through my phone. I looked through Twitter and Instagram and all that good stuff that the young folks do, and I see all my friends, and they're out, and they're bars or clubs or whatever they do, and they're all hanging out together, and they're all spending time together. And one of the things with this job that I knew would happen was that because of traveling so much, I would be isolated a lot of times, and I wouldn't get to spend as much time with my friends and family as I used to before. I was just really out of it. But what I do, almost like a sick day, I give myself a depressed day. I really do. In saying, maybe today, I just take this one day to do something I love to do, something I just want to do. Might not have to talk to anyone that day, but just say, all right, going through a tough time, let me just take a day to myself. And that's what I have to do sometimes. And sometimes I do have to get myself up out of the bed and do something. Example, I had no idea that this would be so fun, but I used to think people who go to the movie theaters by themselves, I was like, man, that's weird, who would do that? And I was at a state of mind and where I was just really out of it. And I said, I'm depressed, I'm sad, I don't know what to do. And I went to the movie theater by myself. It was amazing. I got a great seat. I didn't have to buy my girlfriend snacks. It was the best thing ever. And you don't know what some of the best coping mechanisms are until you try them. Sometimes they're on accident, sometimes you actually try them. And I know that I'm not going to be able to use the same thing every time. And there are days where I'm going to struggle. There are days where, even today was a long day. But I try and find some type of silver lining, or I try and find one positive part of my day. Because I know the entire day might not be great, but I always try and find that one part of the day that was good, at least, and hold on to that. And you know, today was a very long day, but my God, to be here tonight and to see everyone here tonight, that's what I hold on to, and I will. And some days that's hard to. Sometimes it's hard to recognize the good that's going on in your life, and I accept that, and I can relate to that. But don't be afraid to take a depressed day, just like someone takes a sick day. You have to do something for yourself, and that's the best advice I can give. And go to the movies by yourself, seriously.
Thank you for your well-told story. You helped a lot of people. Do you have any thoughts or comments for family members or people who have lost someone and are now left behind with all kinds of questions?
Mm-hmm.
What do we do?
Yeah. You know, as a family, when you lose a loved one to suicide, or it's extremely difficult because not everyone will be on the same page, and that's what I see a lot of times with families. I recently, this is actually 2 or 3 years ago, I was watching Anderson Cooper, and he was doing an interview. He was talking to a therapist, and I think this might have been the first time I saw him talk about it on air. He talked about how his brother took his own life. And he said, my mother is one that will talk about it, and she's open about it, but I do not. I don't like talking about it. And with families, that's difficult, because not everyone's going to be on the same level, on the same page as that. And the family members that can talk about it, it's great to be able to do so, and memory and good memory and all, but sometimes you have to give people some time to catch up to that emotion and feeling of being able to, you know, the Ganleys is a perfect example. You know, when their son Jimmy passed away, suicide, they knew that they wanted to do something, this organization, to help other people, and they still struggle. They really do. They're on the same page as far as telling the story and getting it out there, but as parents, they still, and their daughters as well, they still struggle, but they try and stay on the same page of just being positive when remembering Jimmy in that sense. But it's, I wish I could sit up here and say every process is easy, but it's not. And it takes communication to really understand what page everyone's on as far as that goes.
Hi there. I just wanted to comment on what I thought was one of the most honest statements that I've heard from somebody dealing with mental illness and people around us who have misconceptions. And that statement was that I struggle with this. There is not a cure. Yeah. I am recovering. I am not recovered. And I think a lot of people, a lot of family, a lot of friends say, well, you're going to get over this. You know, you'll be all right. You're going to get over it. And I know I've been guilty of that sometimes also, that you realize that it is a constant struggle. And it was really heartening to hear you make that statement and say that this is how I choose to address it, that you can either choose to fall into it again, or you can choose to fight it as best as you possibly can, but it's always going to be there. So I really was impressed with the statement that you made.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I really do. Thank you.
I know a lot of parents are opposed to the antidepressants, and so, like, could you just explain exactly what they do for you, and like whether, like, do you still use them or not? Do you use them in a different dosage? Since, you know, could you just give more details on it and cover some misconceptions that parents might have about antidepressants?
Absolutely. You know, antidepressant commercials are very interesting, and I timed one to see the side effects that are terrible, and there was like one that was like 1 minute and 12 seconds of just terrible side effects, to the point you forget what the medication was. And so with antidepressants, the way, I've switched antidepressants several times, and dosage as well. That's another process in itself. So I've had to do that, and the way I can best describe it is I don't take a pill and all of a sudden I'm happy. But with the way my brain works, there are those days where it's hard for me to get up out of bed and get my brain going. That antidepressant helps me to do that, to give me the energy to do things that I love. So if I just took my antidepressant but I didn't have solid coping mechanisms, or if I took my antidepressants and I was still drinking to express my thoughts and emotions, it would do nothing for me, as proven in high school. And so that's what's important, is you know, my medication isn't just the pill. The medication is still going to see my psychiatrist. My medication is still making sure, you know, I try and work out, you know, serotonin level, all of those things. You know, I try and boost that. I try and keep myself healthy. And to me, that's part of my medication. And that goes into helping my mental health. And also with you know, it is a kind of debate about antidepressants and whether your child should be taking it or not. And I don't want to have to go into the logistics of everything, because I don't want to start a debate and everyone gets upset. But you know, there's medication I take that are herbs that improve your mental health. And you can look it up, you can research it, but there are vitamins, there are herbs that can also help your mental health as well. And so that's how I view my antidepressant is, you know, I take it every day. I'm gonna have to take it every day for the rest of my life. But just like my best friend Brooke, who has an insulin pump for her diabetes, she's fine with that. So, you know, I'm fine with my medicine too.
I recently spent some time in the psychiatric hospital, and I feel so guilty sometimes when I have suicidal thoughts after being in there. Do you ever get suicide thoughts still, and how do you kind of deal with that?
Yeah, do I ever have thoughts of suicide? You know, I was very, very grateful to be alive. Probably because of the fact that I was just amazed that I was alive at all. And so I do have thoughts where it's, you know, I'm trying to think of the best way to say it, is not necessarily thinking about suicide, but just taking a break from life is what I like to say. Is I wish I could just put a pause button on life right now and just, because there are times that are just so overwhelming. For me, being overwhelmed and being anxious, that's one of my biggest downfalls. That's where I get the most stressed out. And I get anxious about things that haven't even happened yet. I have panic attacks, and that's difficult as well. And there are days where I just want to push the pause button because things might be busy, because things are stressful, overwhelming, all of those things. But that's another one of those times where I have to do something for just myself. And it's not easy. I wish I could say it was. I forget where I was speaking. I'm sober now. And so a young man asked me, whenever you have triggers of wanting to drink, has it gotten easier to say no? Have the triggers gone away? And I said, my triggers to want to drink or anything, they're never going to go away. It's just, what do I do to prevent myself from getting to that point where automatically I was thinking about a drink? And for my depression and suicide, it's the same thing. I'm not immune to going back to that place if I choose the same ways that I coped with before. If I went into that bad path that I was in, I could have suicidal thoughts again or even attempt suicide again, and I acknowledge that. And I know that I'm not safe from, you know, that not happening again. And so I think whenever I do have thoughts of, man, what am I doing here? Can I put a pause button on? Those things, it might take a day or two for me to get out of it, but I accept that, you know. But I understand, it's difficult.
Jordan, one of the questions that I'm sitting back here wondering is, earlier there was a question asked about bringing you in, having you speak to large numbers of people and even a group of this size, and young people and others being in the audience. Has there ever been a time when you feared or you had a feeling that someone sitting in your audience thought what you do today is so cool? That you get to travel, you get to sit in front of big crowds, you get to talk, you get to tell your story. Unfortunately, to tell your story, you had to go through hell. And a very, very lucky ending. That ending won't be that way for everyone. Have you ever encountered that fear? And maybe that's why some places fear having you come in and speak too.
Yeah, I've been told that. I've been told I'm too cool, which is great, to get a compliment like that. I've been told I'm too happy when I speak. I tell jokes during my presentation, and people don't like that as well. Some schools want it to be a scare tactic in a way that drinking and driving assemblies are a lot of times scare tactics. Drugs, you know, addiction, sometimes are scary factors into scaring kids not to want to drink and drive, scaring kids to not want to do drugs. I don't want to scare kids to steer them away from suicide. I want them to talk about what they're going through so it doesn't get to that point of suicide. And I used to wear earrings. I had to take my earrings out because one of the schools said, we can't have that. We can't have you looking that way and coming to speak to our students. The kids
think I'm cool. Middle school and high school students. Colleges are like, ah, you're all right. But the kids think I'm cool, but not for the fact of because I never talk about TV. I never talk about the magazines or anything like that, because that would, to me, come off as bragging or boasting, and I don't want them to come away with that thought in their mind. But I think they might think I'm cool, but not for the reason of, well, Jordan gets to travel and do all of this. I think it's just, well, it's cool that he came to our school and took time to do that. And that's what I've heard from students before. And yeah, that's obvious. A lot of schools are going to say no to me coming to speak at their school because I'm happy and I tell jokes and I smile. I could not do a serious presentation. I just couldn't. That's not my style. That's not who I am as a person. And that's one of my coping mechanisms to relive this story every time, is to tell jokes, to laugh with my audience, and get a chance to smile while I'm talking about this. So the schools who think I'm too cool, I appreciate the compliment, but it's unfortunate, it really is, that we have to have a certain face for suicide. We have to have a certain face for bipolar disorder and depression. It can't be me. It has to be someone that looks like depression, which is sad. We're still in that stigma phase in our society. Hopefully one day we get out of that, but unfortunately that's just the reality of how schools think.
Earlier today you had the opportunity to speak to approximately 1,000 middle school and high school students. Just to follow up on that, can you maybe briefly speak to some of the questions you fielded from those students and the interaction you had from them, so this group can get a feel for their receptiveness to your message?
Yeah, when I spoke this morning, and I forgive me if I don't remember all of the questions, several of the questions were, how can I help a friend who, fill in the blank, who I think has depression, who I think is depressed? How can I talk to my friend? How can I start that conversation? A lot of times people will ask me, what is my recovery like? I forget a couple of the questions today, but a lot of the questions had to do with how I cope with life now, which I think is great, because that's literally the last thing I say is I still struggle when I talk to kids, because that's what I want them to come away with is, yeah, I'm glad that I can do this and be able to tell my story, but I still struggle. And I want to make sure students don't walk out of the auditorium thinking, man, he's got it all figured out. Yeah, that guy's great. Now, and I think that's what was great about those questions today, were kids who might have been struggling themselves and just needed to hear answers that I was able to give. But this morning was absolutely incredible, and the feedback was incredible. And to see so many, again, another taboo subject for young men, to see so many young men be able to be honest about their emotions and feelings when they came up to talk to me, even shed tears. It was just so powerful to me. And to me, that's progress. It really is. That's progress to me.
I just had a question about what signs you could look for in peers, and if you were talking to someone that was maybe talking about being depressed or whatever, what advice you could offer them, or what you could say to a peer that's been talking about being upset or whatever.
Yeah, so you mean like having a friend who is depressed, what can you do? The best question that you can ask is how are you feeling? And it's different than how are you doing, because how are you doing is something we say in our society every day, people, strangers, and we always have the same answer, good, fine. Today, when I was leaving the hotel, I asked the woman, hey, how are you doing? She said, great, how are you? I said, amazing. I was lying, but I was tired. Now, if I asked her, hey, how are you doing? And she said, actually, it's been a rough morning. Do you want to talk about it? I'd be like, no, I got to go speak at a school, but I hope you're okay. But that's just how our society is how are you doing? But how are you feeling allows the person to know that you're actually there to listen and not just waiting for your turn to talk. And that's so important when someone is at that stage where they just need someone to listen. And that's another thing that you can say is not necessarily, if you don't want to talk, if you don't want any advice, that's fine, I'm just here to listen. And not constantly checking on them every second of the day, because obviously that's, might make them upset and scare them off even a little more. But also, if you're recognizing some serious signs and symptoms, bring it up to them, because that means you love them enough and you care them enough to bring that up to them and say, I'm worried about you and I'm here for you for whatever the next step might be. So yeah, acknowledging what you see and having that conversation with them is absolutely what you have to do and can do as a friend.
Hi, Jordan.
Can you share a little bit more about when you were a child? You talked a little bit, you alluded about being very sensitive. I think that was elementary school. I'm thinking more, you know, getting kids younger, prevention. Do you think there were things that your teachers in elementary school or middle school or your parents could have noticed? Do you think therapy at a younger age? I mean, the ultimate goal is to prevent suicide attempts. Do you think you would have been diagnosed as clinically depressed in elementary school? Just some of that.
Yeah, clinically depressed probably was something I probably would have been tested for. Possibly ADHD as well, I would assume so. And an example of how young someone can be and have these thoughts, my mother, her final year of teaching, and my dad and her both acknowledge that they've learned so much about mental health through hearing me speak and be honest about this. There was a first grader that said to my mom, "I just don't want to be on this earth anymore." First grader. And so it doesn't have to be, and I say middle school is a great target audience. I'm glad we're hitting middle schools, but elementary schools too. These are issues that have to be brought up, but it's uncomfortable. We're not sure if at that age can hear this type of message, can hear a presentation about mental health as a whole. But that's the reality, that at that age, that young, first, second, third grade, you can see that. And I know in third grade, that's what I saw myself, definitely. Just being so sad and depressed over things months after they've happened. I remember feeling, this is wrong, but I don't know what it's called. And so, yeah. Oh, okay.
Jordan, thank you for coming tonight. You were really very inspirational.
Thank
I
you.
guess I'm curious about, as a part of your coping strategies, do you incorporate things like NAMI, the help of NAMI, National Association for Mentally Ill, support groups, yoga, meditation, reading inspirational literature, things like that? Is that a part of your coping strategies?
Yeah, I work with NAMI that's in the Philadelphia area where I live. I work with NAMI. I love being able to work with them and even do small workshops. I really do enjoy. You know, outside of that, you know, I would say that I'm trying to think of other coping mechanisms that I use. Writing is huge. When I get home, when I get back to the hotel tonight, I'll probably spend at least an hour or two writing all of my thoughts and feelings on tonight, about today. Today was a long day, so it might be 3 hours that I write. I write the questions that I got. I write how I think I responded to them, and then I write the experiences of people that I met and their stories and what moved them. And that's what I love to do, because in 20, 30 years, I'm going to look back and say, man, at 25, I was able to meet some great people and go to some great places, and I want to make sure that's written down. And that's what I love to do is memorize some of the great moments that I spend today, that I will spend next week, next month in doing this. I've learned that writing out the great things of this job have really helped me cope with some of the lonely and difficult times of this job as well.
Jordan, as you wrap up, I think this group would really enjoy your White House story.
Yeah, the White House story, the infamous White House story. Vice President Biden in 2013, he saw a video of a presentation that I did, and he invited me to the National Conference on Mental Health at the White House. And so it was an incredible experience, and I remember the opening ceremony. It was surreal just to be in the White House, but the opening ceremony was by far the best part. So we're in the room, and they say that welcome the President of the United States. He walks in, it was magical. His swag, it's incredible. And he gets up there, he does a great speech, but while I'm listening, my personality, I just want to know who else is there. This is a big deal. So I look over to the right, and there was this guy with just nice hair. It's just really nice hair. And I was like, man, like, whose hair is that, and what shampoo does he use? And I looked one more time, and it was Bradley Cooper. I was like, oh, snap. So I said to myself, I was like, all right, I'll talk to the president for a few seconds, Bradley Cooper for an hour. You know? So I went in my conversation. I'm probably the only person in the world to ever say this. I went in my conversation with the president to be brief, so I could make a Z line, get over to, Bradley, touch his hair maybe. And so I said, I'll thank the president and then move over. And so I said, President Obama, thank you so much for the invitation to be here. Thank you for all you're doing for mental health in this country. I really appreciate it. Jordan, it's a pleasure to have you here. It's young adults like you who are really gonna make a difference. It took them 10 minutes just to say you're welcome. But it was the most interesting conversation I've ever had. And Bradley Cooper has blue eyes. That's the only thing I got to say. So yes, that is the infamous White House story. Well, can we take one more?
I just wanted to know, like, how would you address a person that does not think that they need help? Because that has become a challenge for me, and like, there's only so much I can do. So hopefully you would tell me something that I haven't done already.
Yeah. You know, that's the thing is, all we can do to offer someone to say, hey, if you want to get help, is say, one, I'll go with you if you want me to go. Two, you know, I support you with whatever you do. I'm not going to tell anyone. It'll just be between us. If you want to go seek treatment, seek help, I'll help you in the process. I'll look up places for you, therapists, whatever it may be. I'll go through this process with you if you need me there. And so that's, honestly, you know, that's the thing that's so tricky with mental health and helping other people is sometimes it's out of our hands. And that's a really crappy feeling because we want to be able to help everyone possible. And we want to be able to fix things. But unfortunately, all we can do is say, I'm here for you. I'm here to help you. If you want to seek treatment, if you want to get help, I'm here. And I'm sure you've done that because you look like a great friend. And that's the best thing that you can do is reassure them that you're there. And they'll never forget that. And thank you so much, everyone. You've been so great. And I'm here after, so come say hi. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, man.
First of all, thank you all for coming. Jordan, thank you very much for the courage and the inspiration and sharing with us. Luke, I want to thank you as well because it takes a lot to get up here and talk to people about such a taboo subject. And I use that word because we don't like to talk about suicide. The word suicide in and of itself evokes a lot of emotions. Probably should introduce myself. My name is Ken Massey. I'm the Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Farmington Hills. I am also the chairperson for Farmington SAFE. So it is that organization that brought this here for you this evening. And the reason that we have our mantra, which is let's talk about it, and that's what this is all about, is because we need to know that there are issues. And this is the second safest city in the state of Michigan. We're the 44th safest city in the country. But guess what? We have issues here. We have lives that are ended by suicide. In fact, when I've actually had the opportunity to go to the National League of Cities and present our Farmington SAFE as a best practice for local elected officials around the country, you receive a lot of very interesting comments. My favorite is, oh, we don't have that problem in our city. No, our city's good. Obviously, these people are out of touch. There are 41,000+ suicides every year in this country. And that number is probably underrepresented because in the Centers for Disease Control statistics, they don't always list suicide as the reason for death. You know, it could be overdose, it could be other things, car accident. How do you know that individual in that single vehicle accident didn't intentionally run into the bridge deck? So that number's probably low. 41,000 Americans end their life by suicide. That's one every 13.1 minutes. That means every 13.2 minutes there's a family asking, what? That pain is unfathomable. Other issues, we need to connect people with resources. And as you walk into this room and you look around, at first, you'll see that we have resources within this community. And part of our reason for Farmington SAFE bringing this to you is to help you realize that we have those resources and to connect you with them. And then most importantly, we want to destigmatize the need for help. You heard a statistic earlier today that 95% of those that attempt suicide have a treatable mental illness. That means if we can identify those symptoms that lead to it, and Jordan has articulated them very well, Luke has done that, if we can identify those early, we can get people into treatment. It isn't going to solve all of the problems, but we need to start someplace. Suicide affects every race, gender, socioeconomic class, educational class, every type of employment. If I ask by a show of hands how many people have been touched by suicide, I would lay money, and I'm not really a betting guy, but I would lay money on the fact that everybody in this room will put their hand up, because we've all had friends, family members, spouses, children, uncles, grandparents that have ended their life in that way. And chances are every one of us who have been touched thought, it's never going to affect me. Denial is not just a river, it's a very powerful thing. And all of these people, because if you talk to a survivor, the first thing you hear is, we didn't know. We thought everything was okay. Well, chances are, just like with cancer, diabetes, heart disease, if you know the symptoms early, you can get treatment early, but it's identifying of those symptoms. And you were all handed cards this evening. On that card is a list of the top 15 risky behaviors, the top 15 signs and symptoms that somebody may be depressed. Awareness, information, those are the keys. That's what Farmington SAFE is. As an elected official, one of my number one priorities is health and safety of the citizens that are in our communities. That's why we fund advanced life support through the fire department, a fire department that has full equipment that they need to protect you. The police department has state-of-the-art equipment to protect you. They do a great job. Our DPW they get the roads clear so that you can drive safely. Health and safety, priority for any elected official. Talking about suicide may be difficult, but more importantly, we talk about mental illness. We change that stigma because suicide is the terminal end of an untreated disease. So, what do I hope you take home from this tonight? And that is, first and foremost, in a community that cares, and that's what I call Farmington Hills. I do think it's a community that cares. We don't always agree on everything, but we care. And in a community that cares, each and every one of us can make a difference if we start supporting one another. In order to make that difference, first of all, we have to know that there is no stigma in getting help. We should listen to one another. The stories that have been told, listen, really, if you ask somebody, hey, how you doing? How many of us would do that? And then you pass right by that person. And there is a story in this field about somebody who has actually written a suicide note. This individual ended up taking their life, but in the note it said, if somebody stops and talks to me along the way, I'm not going to go through with this. Another one, those types of things, we need to listen to each other. If you're going to ask somebody how are you doing, for God's sakes, pay attention. Don't be afraid. There's no stigma in getting help. Make a reality of us making a difference. We have to know that there's an issue. We have to identify it. These posters over here that are at the Farmington SAFE booth, the numbers that chart with the greens and blues and reds, that's the Centers for Disease Control. That's their chart by age group, the top 10 reasons for death. 15 to 24-year-olds, suicide is number 3. That's impressive. 25 to 34, it jumps up to number 2. We need to understand there's an issue. You have to have information. You have to know what to do. You have to know what to look for. That's what those cards are. If you know what the signs and symptoms are of high blood pressure, cholesterol issues, you know, you've got clotting disorders, wow, you could have heart disease, you better go see a cardiologist. You know what? If you're doing risky behaviors, giving away your things, thinking about death, you're preoccupied with it, substance abuse, changes in sleeping habits, changes in physical feelings. I was at a meeting the other day, found out that there's a large statistic that shows 85% of people who attempt suicide have seen their primary care physician within the last 30 days. But they don't complain that they're depressed. They complain that they have some kind of physical manifestation, and we don't screen correctly. Those things, we need to know what to look for. Then you have to have the courage to ask challenging questions. We do safe talk programs. We try and help facilitate that, but you have to have the courage to ask those tough questions. And if you get an answer, you have to be ready to act on that answer. You need to know what to do. That's what our police and fire officers are here for. Call 911. Most importantly, we need to talk about it, because that's how we get this. That's how we're going to make a change. So those are the kind of thoughts I wanted to leave with you, to understand that you do have these resources. Again, I want to thank Luke, and I want to thank Jordan. I want to thank our mayor for kicking us off. Our resource tables, we have Common Ground represented here tonight. They operate crisis lines. As kids, you can get a hold of them by texting message, social media. They have all manner of ways to get in touch with them. Noble, which is No Bullying Live Empowered, and Farmington Empowered are no bullying efforts, and they're represented here tonight. Our Call to Action Coalition to end substance abuse and domestic violence is here tonight. Farmington Youth Assistance is here this evening. Maple Grove, which has treatment facilities for substance issues, are here. The Oakland County Youth Suicide Prevention Task Force is back here. And Josie, you need to connect with those people. Our Emergency Preparedness Commission is here. And most importantly, SAFE is here. Suicide Awareness for Everyone. We actually had another acronym, Farmington Area Suicide Prevention Task Force. That acronym was horrible. And I said something to our mayor, and Barry actually said, well, why don't you call it SAFE, Suicide Awareness for Everyone? I went, oh, I wish I thought of that. For those of you who have questions, I know Jordan will have some questions, but we also have with us volunteers from the Michigan School for Professional Psychology and some other psychology and social work professionals who are here, and I'm going to tell you their names and have them stand up as I read the name. If you want to talk to them about anything, they're here volunteering their time to talk to you. So we have Dr. Lee Bach, who's a psychologist from the Michigan School. We have Bridget Lynch, grief counselor, and Bridget is also on the board of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. We have Ann Karsadovich, and if I hacked that up, I'm sorry. Nick Kapol. There's Nick back there. Michael James up here. Ryan Beal. And Dr. Beth Rutkowski. And so these folks are here. And we have Anna Cesar. She's actually a member of SAFE. So these folks are here volunteering their time. If you want to talk to them or ask them specific questions one-on-one, they're happy to do that. I'm also going to say that Farmington SAFE, this is a group of volunteers. These are community members. They're public safety liaisons, our police chief. We have representation of the fire department, representation from the city of Farmington's public safety, mental health professionals, Common Ground members, youth members, support from Farmington and Farmington Hills. In fact, this group was formed by a resolution. All of these people come together with one single goal, and that is to try and save a life. We want to make a difference. I would like my Farmington SAFE members to please stand and be recognized. These are the people that brought this to you. And while you guys are standing, because we want to be able to point out the right people, Farmington SAFE, while it's a community organization, receives zero funding from the state or from the city. All of our funding is through a private memorial fund, and that's the Graham Smith Memorial Fund, and that's who's represented over at that table with SAFE. So you guys want to stand up? These are members from Farmington, or from Graham Smith Memorial Fund. Catherine with the purple shirt, wave, because that's my wife. Yeah, we kind of have to, I want to point her out because, you know, obviously she's working harder in this room than anything she puts up with me. So with all those supporters, our funding source is complete. It's a 501c3. That's how we bring this to you. We bring community conversations to you on about a quarterly basis and other programs. So if you want to sign up and be on our mailing list, we'll send you emails and so forth to get to this so that we can make a difference. This is a community that cares. I thank you all for being here, and let's go out there and let's help folks.